Just in case you don't know, Gawker is now facing a lawsuit by the Hulkster for $150 million. I mean, thank God. We're facing a site that is totally okay on outing a privately gay guy and publishing a sex tape of Hulk Hogan without his permission. I find it surprising that people are actually defending Gawker for this. Gawker is willing to release a sex tape of Hulk Hogan to the public. But when that happens to Jeniffer Lawrence...
Hey, put the donuts down! Drop the Krispy Kreme, Serpico! We need your help here!
My house look like my father and my brother after 9 months or something.
Gawker going bankrupt is great and all, but then I found out about this tweet of this guy saying that it's the death of freedom of press. Now, to a lot of intellectuals who know what kind of atrocities the Gawker did, this tweet is pretty stupid. However, to a dumbass moron like me, this tweet is intriguing. Gawker, after all, is a part of the press, and they're technically speaking journalists. Now, if we try our hardest to stop Gawker, a press site who has the freedom and the right to express whatever they want, what's stopping us to try hard to stop any other news site? Is the death of Gawker really marks the death of freedom of press? Or is this guy just spewing bullcrap? So today I'm gonna find out where we all can draw the line, where we all can understand that maybe freedom of speech should be limited into a certain degree. Or wait a second, is it really freedom of speech? So what is Gawker? Gawker is a gossip site that is scandalous and vile. Gawker owns a lot of other websites, including Kotaku, one of the worst video game websites to have ever been put by mankind. Gawker faced a lawsuit from Hulk Hogan for publishing a sex tape of him without his consent. In the end, Hulk Hogan wins and he gets $150 million for that. Okay, we know that Gawker has stolen Hulk Hogan's sex tape and are not willing to just put it down, even though it's pretty much a breach of privacy. Now, can you consider a breach of privacy as freedom of speech? In this video, I want to distinct the difference between freedom of speech and whatever the hell kind of thing that Gawker is doing, because Gawker is not freedom of speech. Read this article showing 10 of the worst Gawker writers and what kind of articles that they write. Here are some of the highlights. Now that you've seen some examples of the atrocities that Gawker and co have done, you can probably assume that it's not really freedom of speech. And you'd be right. Some people are using the excuse of freedom of press for disguising and justifying whatever kind of actions that they're doing in the journalism realm. While it is correct that freedom of press applies to all sorts of journalism websites, including Gawker, unfortunately, what Gawker does is not journalism. There's something that you need to know about freedom of speech that I personally think need to be addressed and need to be made clearer, because a lot of people have their own definition of freedom of speech, and I find it a bit conflicting. So I'm gonna try to do my best to just properly define what I really think about freedom of speech. Remember Legend of Korra? Season 3 and Season 4 of that show have two enemies with radically different ideologies. One is Zahir, who is more of an anarchist, and one is Kuvira, who is more of a totalitarianist. These two are villains of the series. They are both extremes of the opposite spectrum, and Korra has to fight both of them in order to regain balance. She has to fight for control, but she also has to fight for freedom. You see, when I'm referring to freedom of speech, I'm not referring to freedom of all speech. Now that sounds crazy because the term is freedom of speech, which means free to express anything without all sorts of restraints. But going back to the Korra comparison, you're referring to a very anarchist definition of freedom of speech. If this is what you call freedom of press, it's a very anarchist one, which is why the entire world is standing in unison when you crash and burn. What I'm referring to freedom of speech is not in a very, very, very literal sense, but in a more politically balanced fashion. We hate the two opposite extremes because they're bad, even for cartoon standards. As humans, we try our hardest to achieve balance, and freedom of speech in this context is a more politically balanced one. It's one where you can express your ideas, but your ideas will be open to criticism and be challenged by other ideas. If you go into the anarchist route, you can openly express your ideas, any ideas, including the idea of you bombing a high school, and you're gonna get away with it just fine. If you go into a totalitarian route, you're not free to express any idea. The only thing that you can speak about are only the acceptable ideas, not according to the majority, but according to the ones with the most power. You see, true freedom of speech is the best because people can openly express ideas and let the majority decide if they're acceptable or not. However, in this definition of freedom of speech, it entirely depends on the holders of those ideas if they want to change it according to the standards of the majority. Unfortunately, Gawker does not change, despite the harsh criticisms directed towards the site. The reason why people absolutely despise Gawker is not only because they're scandalous, incredibly vile site, but because they don't take criticism. People have confronted them about their scandalous activities so many times, and they did not reply to it. They do not improve their site. They do not conform into the modern standards. And when I say modern standards, I mean the majority of peoples, because not many peoples, not even social justice warriors, agree with what Gawker is doing. So now we can conclude that this guy's definition of press freedom is a very anarchist one. A very extreme one. The real question is, who really is this guy? A contributor to Polygon, the other incredibly corrupt video game site. I guess it's no surprise that this man is willing to defend something like this. He pretty much benefits from it. That's all for the video today. If you like this, you can go ahead and click the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.